in our forum today. The topic is student assessment, how to evaluate student performance online. Throughout the PRINTeL project, we have discovered that student assessment, how to set up exams, how to measure the growth of the students, the development of the students is a crucial topic for, I would say, for many of us, maybe for all of us. As we also heard in some of the previous presentations today, in our teaching, one of the main principles is that we select adequate and appropriate methods to check whether students have reached the learning outcomes. And in our session today, we will look into this topic more in detail and also explore what are the limits to online student assessment. So this is one of the issues that we may discuss in the upcoming session. Other topics may include issues of, for example, privacy, because if we conduct online exams, for example, in our university, we require students to switch on their microphones and also especially their cameras, and that raises sensitive issues on privacy of the students. And other issues could be that in some circumstances, we may also face challenges in setting up and conducting online exams. For example, when it comes to preventing cheating. So there are numerous issues to be discussed. And the moderator of this session will be Aleksanyan from Yerevan State University. She is going to conduct also the moderation when it comes to the questions and answers session at the end of this part. Now I would like to introduce the first speaker. The first speaker is Wolfgang Weiß. He is a lecturer in my university in Austria, in Graz. He joined our team about 2 years ago as a lecturer in the bachelor program on production engineering and organization. And Wolfgang previously worked as a lead researcher at the Virtual Vehicle Research Center in Graz. He was responsible for acquisition, management, and implementation of national and international research projects in the field of automobile production. His areas of expertise include general mechanical engineering, toolmaking, non-cutting manufacturing, and simulation. And what I could also observe is that Wolfgang developed a great passion for teaching, and he's one of our key experts now on how to conduct exams online. Dear Wolfgang, I'm now passing on the word to you, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Kiendl. I have to share my desktop. So immediately we see my second desktop, and the title of my presentation today is Designing Online Examinations. Is it visible to you already?
Yes, it is.
Okay, very good. So I don't want to introduce myself a second time, so thank you very much, Ms. Kiendl, for this step. So let me directly dig into the topic of how to design online examinations. The title was kept quite general, but what I wanted to talk to you about within this session is how to evaluate online examinations with the frame of a teacher, of a lecturer. First, let me start with some general definition. We distinguish in general between online exams and electronic exams. So what is meant with classically online exams? The online exam can take place with or without supervision. So it can have summative or formative character, and it can be in general synchronous or asynchronous. If we talk about really classical summative exams at the end of a lecture, we talk about electronic exams. These electronics exams, at least at FH Ioneum or in my area, are performed under supervision, mostly in presence, in a computer laboratory around, in front of some PCs, where the students take get online questions and answer these online questions via a conventional PC environment. These electronic exams normally take place in a synchronous way. So all the students take the same exam at the same time. This is actually a part what I have to do afterwards, after the session. So I will leave earlier for that. So I will do an electronics exam afterwards in-house. So these are the two definitions dealing with the general topic of online exams. And what is it all about? To organize online exams, you can use, or everyone can use a learning management system. We at FH NEOM use the system Moodle, which is widely spread and I think well known among all of you. And this learning management system has several advantages. It can capture online exams both on formative evaluation and on summative evaluation. So formative evaluation means to apply and practice learned concepts. This is normally done during the learning progress. So you want to capture or evaluate here the learning progress. This is done via quizzes, for example, or with group activities led by an online scheme or whatever. So this is something continuous. And at the end of a lecture, normally we, also maybe you, will do a summative evaluation, a summative exam, or an electronic exam as defined before. This is the purpose for this is to assess knowledge and to assign a grade at the end of a lecture. And this is meant to be a tool to capture the learning success at the end of a lecture, for example. So these are the two domains we can apply this scheme of online exams: in formative evaluation or in summative evaluation. Learning management systems like Moodle give us now the broad or good advantage in asking or performing multimodal questions. What does this mean? Questions or electronic questions can be asked in very many different ways. This cannot be done that easily on paper. So this is a very big advantage with online examinations. That's also why I like this online type of examination, because of this multimodal question type. Let me show you some examples on that. For example, multimodal means that we can use audiovisual content for questions inside an online exam. So what does audiovisual content mean? You can present a video. Sorry for being this video that fast, but PowerPoint just changed the video structure. I don't know why. But anyhow, you see a video performing a forging process, and during the question here is which forming process is shown on this video, and you can get the feedback from the students in terms of an answer text, and this answer text can be evaluated automatically in Moodle based on a scheme like here with a syntax on here with asterisks, giving you the freedom of asking for a specific question, for specific answer wordings, and you can also give the evaluation, sorry for the German wording here, present the evaluation in a way you want to do it. For example, for the full answer of a free-form forging, the student will get 100% grade. In this case, it's 1 point. And for the answer of, for example, forging only, it's just a part of the answer I expected here, the student gets 50% of the points. So you're very flexible in grading, and grading can be more or less automatically performed. Of course, you need to check all the answers at the end, but anyhow, you can do an automatically pre-grading of the answers. And this at the end saves some time. Similar, there's the option of randomized questions and answers. So for example, you can have a question here, it's in German because it was a German test, but you can choose from different answer possibilities for specific aspects. And the student need to choose, of course, the right answers for these aspects. This is also one type of question, one question type possible. Drag and drop is very interesting for me because you can have some kind of images where students need to drag and drop texts and or figures onto an image. And this, sorry, where is it? Drag and drop. So the student can put the answers right in place in front of a graphic, and this graphical image can be as complex as you want it to be, in fact. And we have also the possibility to check for short text answers. So for example, I can enforce the students or ask the students to introduce some text answers, and the text answer can then be evaluated according to specific keywords necessary to answer this question. In this case, the syntax in Moodle gives you in the first instance the number of points, for example. Then the answer type can be stated as a short answer, SA, and then followed by the 100% for the following wording, for example. So for the answer something with welding, the student would get 100%. He would also get 100% of the points for soldering or for gluing for this question, for example. So with the syntax type of automatic questioning or answering evaluation, the lecture is quite flexible. And this is, yeah, this gives you a lot of freedom in the multimodal question type. The second important issue is the type of statistical analysis. So if you use a learning management system, lecturers have the possibility to assess all these answers in a statistical way. And I pointed out two of very important and efficient parameters there. So Moodle gives you the possibility to calculate a so-called facility index. The facility index gives you indication about the overall difficulty of the questions. So if the facility index is very high, the difficulty is very low, of course, and vice versa. And the discriminative efficiency, DE, is another parameter calculated based on the answer, on the statistics of the answers. It gives you the effectiveness of a question to differentiate the level of knowledge of the students who answered the questions. So this discriminative efficiency gives you an indicator of the discriminative possibility due to a specific questioning type. What does this mean in more detail? To skip these slides. So the facility index is just the mean score of students, of all the students on a specific item. So what you see on this table is are two specific questions, question 1 and question 2, with a facility index of 53. This is an average facility, average difficult question. And with a facility index, the question 2 has a facility index of over 90%. So this is an extremely easy question. So most of the students could answer these questions with a very high grade. This is one of the statistical results, but there are some more. Just in the next step, there's this discrimination index. And this discrimination index can also be calculated for every question of an exam. And the discrimination index indicates how effective the question is in differentiating between the individual performances of each student. Meaning that this discrimination index indicates how is this question able to select, to differentiate between good students and not so good students in terms of this answering result. And the second, so parameters above 50% lead to very good discrimination, and below 30%, there's a weak discrimination indicated. And based on the facility index and the discrimination index, a discriminative efficiency can be calculated. And now this value is very important at the end, because this indicates how good the discrimination index is relative to the difficulty of the question. So a very easy, simple question, a very facile question, or a very is not very efficient in selecting discriminating between good and not so good students, or able and not so able students. So at the end, you want to reach a good discrimination relative to the difficulty, and this should lie above 50%. So how does this result look like at the end? One comment before, this efficiency is only valid if you have average facility index in your questions between 30 and 70%. And at the end, this looks like this. This is a statistical result from Moodle. On the x-axis, you have the question numbers, and on the y-axis, you have the percentage of the result. And you see the facility index in purple has in general quite high levels. So the facility index is quite high. So this exam was quite easy, quite simple. Many students could reach good grades. And the discriminative efficiency is in the average for some questions above 30%. So this is what we want to reach. Discriminative efficiency below 30% is very bad. So that these questions cannot distinguish between able and not so good students at the end. So based on these results, lecturers can reflect on the quality of the exam based on quantitative parameters. And related to these results, there's also related research based on the work of Gamache et al. He did the same with mathematics in the field of mathematics. And he also found out that the facility index and the discrimination efficiency can be used for the qualitative development of questionnaires. So at the end, with the learning management system like Moodle, we can first increase the transparency in performance assessment. Second, we can enhance the student engagement through this multimodal type of questions. We can give continuous automatic feedback, and we can generate time savings through the automated evaluation. And finally, at the end, we can do with the statistic analysis a continuous improvement of the question pool for a specific lecture or exam. That's the end of my presentation. 2 minutes too much. Sorry for that. And I'm open for your questions.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang Weiß, for illustrating not only how you set up the exam, but also how you measured efficiency and facility. We will certainly come back to that at the end of in the Q&A session. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to introduce the next two presenters, because the next presentation will be done jointly by Wim Van Petegem and Lilit Sargsyan. First about Wim Van Petegem. Those of you who were already present in the first session have met Wim before. He is a professor at Catholic University of Leuven in the Faculty of Engineering Technology, and specializing on learning technology applied in engineering education in order to improve the quality of teaching and learning experiences. So welcome again, Wim Van Petegem. And I also warmly welcome Lilit Sargsyan from Yerevan State University, who is a PhD and associate professor at English Department of the Faculty of European Languages and Communication. And Lilit is also a CELTA certified teacher of English. Her interests are in English for specific purposes, comparative typology, and innovative pedagogy. And the two colleagues are going to talk about assessment of and for online learning. And I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see if my slides can be shown.
Yes, they are visible.
This is better, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, this will be a duo presentation. I will be very short, and the most time will be spent by my colleague Lilit Sargsyan about how she is applying assessment in and for and of online learning. Let me first give a short introduction to assessment. And I think it's important when you talk about assessment that you need to remember why are we actually doing assessment. And I refer here to an open book that you could download, written by Tony Bates, a Canadian expert, longtime expert in distance education, online learning. And he says there are several reasons for assessment of learning and for learning. It has to do, of course, with the improving and improvement of students' experiences, learning experiences. It has to do with checking, assessing the students' knowledge and competences. But it's also needed for us as teachers to get feedback from our students on how we are actually teaching. It could later on also be used by employers and so on. It could help students in orienting them with further studies, and it could also help the institution in terms of how effective and efficient they are as an organization. I think that this is important to always keep in mind, that assessment is a very broad aspect of teaching and learning. It all starts with learning objectives. We need to define clearly what learning objectives are, because that will then help the students to know what they actually will have to learn in the course, and how they will be evaluated on their learning experience. And at the same time, it also helps the teachers with how they can communicate with the students what is expected from them. And it could also help them to do in the discussions with students later on, in case there are some discussions about the exam and the assessment form. I don't have to elaborate too much on that, I think, but if you want to define clear learning objectives, maybe you could think about a SMART formulation. SMART as acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So if you define your learning objectives, always think about this SMART way of doing it. I think it has already been mentioned by the previous speaker what formative and summative assessment is. Formative assessment is during the learning process and is mainly meant for giving feedback to the students. Summative assessment is done at the end to check if everything has been learned by the students, and is more focusing on the final stage of the learning experience. Having said that, again, we need to talk about competences of teachers. And I think that there is a lot of literature about what is expected from teachers with regard to assessment. It has to do with being able to choose what kind of assessment method you want to use, to also then develop that assessment method. So will it be an oral exam, or is a written exam needed? Is a multiple choice question exam okay? Or do we need open questions? That are all the things that you need to be able to do as a teacher. You also need to be able to administer the assessment and the results of your assessment. You need to think about the results from the assessment and how you could use to further improve your course and planning your teaching, let's say. And it could also help you in further developing your own skills of assessing students. If you want to read more, you can go to the reference on the slide here. I think before I give the floor to my colleague, I think it's important to also mention that many organizations, and I refer again to JISC, the UK ICT organization for higher education, they have produced a recent report on what is the future of assessment, what kind of assessment, the principles of assessment that we need to target in 2025. And they talk about authentic assessment. So assessment should be as close as possible to the world in which our students are living, maybe bring in real world problems to tackle in their assessments. Assessment should be accessible, especially when we talk about online assessment. We need to make sure that students have all equipment available and tools available to access the assessment. We also need to think, and again, in an online environment, about how this can be automated. The digital tools provide us with some opportunities here, with advantages, but you should not exaggerate. An appropriately automated assessment is the goal here. Continuous assessment. This assessment is not something that you do at certain moments, and especially at the final stage of the course, but assessment is something that starts from the day one that the student entered the campus until the day that they graduate, and maybe later on. And secure assessment, it has been said in the introduction, we also need to make sure that the assessment is done by the right student at the right moment with the right tools and in a right and proper way. Secure, and at the same time, the students should also feel secure in that environment. It should be it's sort of, relaxing environment is maybe a bit too far, but he or she should have a good feeling, let's say, to do the assessment. Otherwise, we are not measuring what we want to measure. And I think that these are the things that I wanted to give as an introduction. And I give now the floor to my colleague Lilit to continue with her experiences.
Well, thank you, Honorable Chairman, Moderator. I would like to thank all the contributors and organizers of Erasmus Plus PRINTeL project, and of course, Professor Wim Van Petegem for this wonderful opportunity of presenting the outcomes of Yerevan State University student assessment in the context of online learning. To resonate with the professed innovative approaches to student assessment, I would like to share that we have contextualized the proposed methods to make the assessment as effective as possible for Yerevan State University students who have been trying to adapt to the new reality of this world. Ergo, we have come to acknowledge the imperatives of preparing even our first-year students of bachelor program for situations when they have to self-assess their performance objectively, and probably will need the support of their peers to identify all those blind spots. But most importantly, we have tried to show our learners the necessity of continuous self-development, considering the mounting frequency of assessment procedures and appraisal meetings conducted in many companies these days. To make the assessment both efficient and meaningful, we have provided the students of economics and actuaries department with guidance in learning how to assess their own performance adequately in order to ensure incremental development of language competencies. Assuming that self-assessment is a skill that is best developed, granted that learners receive constructive and positive feedback, we have started to view feedback, and our students have joined the suit as a tool of endless possibilities for learning and self-development. Thus, we are coming to the point that students are almost ready to perceive both formative and summative assessment as integrated part of learning for success. The initial implementation of formative assessment occurs with the assessment of learners' existing skills. Then the zone of proximal development is identified, and accordingly, the scaffolding strategies are defined to help our learners achieve the objectives that are very important part of SMART model that was mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. Here are some of the scaffolding tools that help develop and simultaneously assess students' competencies. These are my master program students of actuaries department, and they are participating in a mind mapping activity. Actually, this is Ishikawa's graph on Miro platform, and they are contributing some ideas, and in this way they are also being assessed because the pre-taught vocab is being mentioned here. Click on, please. Here, they find themselves exposed to multi-level activities pertaining to the implementation of psychographics in the marketing of coffee-made sneakers. The process of fishbowl activity gives us the chance to assess their communicative skills, problem-solving abilities, and critical thinking. Next slide, please. And here, the employed real-time feedback app, i.e. Mentimeter, is being used not only to assess the concurrent outcomes of spaced learning, but also it simulates the more knowledgeable learners to go extra mile and probably make inferences on the transformations they observe on the screen. I would also like to say that this type of assessment is absolutely stress-free because it is anonymous. Next slide, please. Once learners get used to continuous patterns of formative assessment, that should lead to the development of language competencies. But not only that, once they see the value in self and peer assessment, there comes the moment for summative assessment. project-based learning provides some unique opportunity to conduct multidimensional assessment, benefiting from the combinatorial impact of project-based learning and inquiry-based learning. First-year students of management department present the evaluation of fair trade potential of their own business initiative. In this picture, we can see Natalie, David, who was, by the way, demobilized, and Natalie promoting their healthy lifestyle project. Click on, please. In this picture, we can see Anaid, Mary, Lucy are elaborating about the pitfalls of struggling local startup, which is called Papuk. So in this way, they have, I think this process of assessment is directly connected with the process of constant learning. Next slide, please. Project-based learning gave the demobilized students of finance department, namely Artashes, Hay, Khachatur, the chance to fit in with the group. I think the idea of fitting in with was mentioned by Peter today, and I do appreciate that. It gave them a chance to push aside all those haunting images of battles of war and get engaged with the process and actually enjoy it. They redirected their pent-up desire to do something, to take an action, and chose to help these women from Xiaomian region to get off the ground and develop their business initiative, which is Jingyalovat, yeah. And I would like to say that the encouraging feedbacks that from Facebook motivated them to the point that they gained much confidence and demonstrated their speaking abilities and also public speaking skills and the whole pre-taught vocab they managed to learn during the period they were with us during these presentations. And next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. And I would like to say that these students, Angelina, Anaid, Tigran, Ani, and Anaid gained momentum while exploring problem-based learning. And Tigran, actually, who was also demobilized, got integrated into the process very quickly, and to help them, his peers, he developed a new skill, which is vlogging, and if I'm not mistaken, he's quite successful in that. Yeah, next slide, please. And this is, I would like to come up with some short summary pertaining to the importance of assessment carried out in this online way. Thus, we can conclude that online format of learning provides endless opportunities for two-channel assessment. By two-channel, I mean from assessment that comes from teachers, and on the other hand, assessment, peer assessment and self-assessment. And also it can be carried out concurrently and by the end of the course. And here are the conclusions and takeaways that I would like to draw your attention to. First of all, assessment aims at measuring the learner's cognition, and it requires great deal of pre-teaching. It refers to all aspects of teaching, but also learning how to self-assess. And I would also like to emphasize that in online learning, different assessment techniques are to be used, but the assessment criteria that are provided to students should be provided timely.
Dear Lilit, sorry to interrupt, but we need to conclude this part.
Actually, this is what I wanted to say. Just one last point. We need to stimulate dialogue and acknowledge the group effort. This is what I would like to highlight. And the last, yes, thank you very much for support, Wim, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, dear presenters, sharing with us very interesting models and possibilities on how to do student assessment and at the same time support the personal growth process of the students. Thank you very, very much. Now we come to the next presentation, and I can introduce the next speaker, who is Giga Khositashvili. He is an invited lecturer at Ilia State University and also Deputy Library Director, responsible for implementation of a learning management system across the university. Also, as an instructional designer, he provides support to academic staff. Besides, he is a trainer at the Teachers Professional Development Center, founded within the PRINTeL project at Ilia State University. And this again illustrates the impact that the PRINTeL project has had on Ilia State University. His main interests are connected to knowledge management and technology integration into education. And he has been participating in different Erasmus Plus projects as a trainer. So, dear Giga, I may now pass on the word to you.
Thank you, dear Doris. So I will quickly share my screen and share the presentation. Thank you for your kind introduction. And let me just, okay, so do you see the presentation?
Yes, we see it.
Thank you once again. So I won't take much of your time to introduce myself, as you perfectly have done it. So the aim of this session, the aim of this session is to share our experience, the experience at Ilia State University regarding the assessing of students' learning outcome and the practice that we had since March 2020, when the pandemic started. So the main question which arises is how can we ensure that the students are doing their assignment by themselves? So I just want to remember to reflect somehow on the practice that we had in the beginning of March 2020. I remember that my colleagues and everyone actually at the university, the number of questions that was asked from the academic staff was how to conduct classes online. But when we moved this step, then the next question that came was how to assess students online and how to guarantee that the assessment is done properly. So this question is something that is still the biggest, seems to be the biggest challenge so far, not only in our case or in case of Georgian higher educational institutions, but all over the world. And as we see and hear the practice of some other our partner higher education institutions, they have more or less the same challenges. So the idea of this session is that I will try to briefly present what was the practice of delivering or conducting the assignments or midterm and final exams at Ilia State University. In advance, I would like to mention that the scientific research has not done regarding this data, and all this information is kind of fresh and just some findings. So I would like to start with the definition of the academic integrity. I'm pretty sure that everyone is familiar with this definition. This is, I brought this from the glossary of European Network for Academic Integrity, but in other words, like we can define the academic integrity as so what is integrity? It is what you are doing when no one is watching. So since March 2020, what we are watching is that now we are having this exact time. So our students are doing their assignments, and we cannot guarantee, we cannot be 100% sure that they are doing it in an honestly way. So let's say. So what exactly I mean in this? So academic misconduct, the types and the forms of academic misconduct might be vary, and I just listed few of them. The most common is the plagiarism, and this is the cases that we even met before the pandemic. It is not something that started only after the March 2020, but we also had these cases before that. But besides, it might be cheating, cases of cheating, and these types of cheating and the forms of cheating, there is a big variety of that, and I will try to comment on this later in my slides as well. Also, we see cases of fabrication of research data in the level, not in the very beginning. I mean, not in the students of bachelor studies, but maybe those who are conducting some research, those who have to produce some research papers. So we might have some cases of fabrication of the research data. And I mean, in this, I mean that sometimes there might happen that students do not really collect the data in a proper way. For example, if they are conducting a quantitative research, they just put these numbers and try to summarize or make the summaries based on these numbers, which they put there by themselves. So also there are some cases of non-authorized collaboration, and it means that by this term, so we mean that we cannot fully identify if someone is sitting beside our students or someone is sitting behind the cameras. So there might be cases that students share the credentials of their learning management system to their colleagues or to their relatives, and someone might write the test or quiz or even the writing task and not the student himself. Also, the contract cheating cases are increased, and this is something that before the pandemic, these cases was not that high. It doesn't mean that they didn't exist here, but it was something that was not that much discussed. And now, after the March, so the recent year, what we see is the open promotion of this kind of services into the social network. So we see these companies or the individuals who are promoting themselves and offer these services to students directly, that they can write whatever the writing task is. They can pass the exams instead of the students, and etc. So this is something that can be seen. And also we faced some cases, or we identified some cases of false quotation. So it means that there are cases when students are quoting, and this is not the real quote, and the author is not really saying that. And also, as I have mentioned, this is not the whole list, because the types and the forms, I think that everyone has noticed recently that the types and the forms are increasing day by day, or week by week. And these are the activities that the student might come across. So and the information is spread all over the world. So it means that it's easier for our student to get access to the information. And if someone into the United States finds some solution, it means that at the same day it will be accessible to our students. So it is something that is changing very quickly. I mean, the situation and the new forms might be here in a while. So then when we see that there are some cases of academic misconduct, then the number one question that comes into our mind is, why did students cheat? So why did they do this kind of misconduct? So, and here I just listed some of the reasons, very common reasons that we are listed. I mean, that they are known for public before the pandemic. They were known before the pandemic as well. So the first one is that they have fear of failures, and they decide to act like this. Also, they have the desire to get better grades, and for this reason, sometimes they would do that. Lack of information about the academic integrity in general is a case not only in Georgian higher educational institution, but in many cases. So sometimes neither the university nor the academic staff highlight enough the importance of academic integrity, and that might cause the cases of academic misconduct. Also, the content and the forms of instructions, especially when it comes to the distance learning, because during this time the communication might not be that in that high level as during the face-to-face instructions, and sometimes students might lack of these instructions. So it might happen that they simply do not understand what the assignment is, what is the task that they have to do. Also, one of the key reasons is lack of support services at the university, and in support services I mean the academic services accessible for students and academic staff. And finally, the practice of not punishing others. So it means that if there is a teacher who doesn't require the sanctions, for example, in case of plagiarism, it means that the next day all the students will at least will try to do the same. So what type of misconduct is common during the distance learning? And first of all, this is sharing information in social media groups. I'm not sure what happens in our partner institutions regarding this, but what I noticed here in our case is that students are very active in social media groups. Normally they have these closed groups with no teacher, so the teacher cannot access to these groups, and they share the information there. So I mean, when they are having an exam or they are having an assignment to write, they quickly share this into these groups and try to cheat in this way. Also, they asking for support to another person. We mentioned this before. So when students ask for help to their relatives, parents, or whoever, also what we noticed is that they are making screenshots of the questions, and then they gather this screenshot in one space in these social media groups, and there is a risk of accessing students to the question bank. So if there is a question bank, by the end of the day, it might happen that all of these questions are on the student side. And if the lecturer or the instructor use the same questions for the finals, for example, that might be a risk. Also, we have this in cases of contract cheating, and sometimes also what we have noticed recently is that they are very active and trying to avoid the similarity detection in writing assignment. I mean, the program what we have implemented here at our university, sometimes they are trying to avoid to check their papers against the system. So here I somehow to summarize what I wanted to mention here, what did change during the pandemic, the types of academic misconduct, because the forms were changed, and also the forms of detecting and the ways of preventing. What didn't change is the code of ethics or the policy of academic integrity. So we haven't done any changes recently, and the mechanism and procedures are the same. And I think what should not be changed, what we agree, is the quality of teaching and learning. And for this reason, I will try to quickly comment on how to minimize the risk. And my colleagues mentioned this in previous presentations, and I will just briefly comment on this. We are also using this learning management system Moodle at ICU, and here are some solutions to this, to the above mentioned problems, what we have found so far. So first of all, the number of questions in the question bank. So the much they create the questions, I mean the instruction, it's better for the process. Different types of questions. So I also always ask to our instructors that try to differentiate the questions and the forms of questions and avoid just the multiple answered questions, so multiple choice questions. So in our case, there was an instructor who didn't type the question, but instead they put the images of the questions, and she told me that it prevents and that the student cannot directly copy from the question when they see. So and this might be an idea as well. Also the time limit, which is crucially important. If we give students more time, it means that we give them possibility to cheat. To cover all the students at the same time, and in this I mean that if imagine that you have 100 students in one group, I would advise that to include all of them at the same time in the exam. In our case, we have that kind of courses with 1,500 students, and we managed this semester and in previous semester as well that we are conducting the finals with all these students all together at the same time.
Excuse me, Giga, we are also a little bit tight in the timing. I would kindly ask you to finish and conclude soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I've just briefly mentioned that the safe exam browsing functionality was just added into the new version of the Moodle, and that was from the administrative side. From the side of instruction and from the side of academic staff, what we can do: inform our students, agree on etiquette in advance. So we have to explain to our students in the very beginning that we are familiar with that kind of misconduct, and we know, and we are trying our best to minimize that risks. Also to diversify the assessment methods. We shouldn't, I always advise my colleagues not to use only one type of assessment, and to diversify it as much as it's possible. Student support services, we already mentioned, and the individual and timely feedback is also a key here. So these are my references, and thank you for your attention. I guess I am out of time here.
Thank you very much for the interesting presentation and highlighting the framework and the risks and how to mitigate the risks. Maybe we do need new procedures for the new technologies. Yeah. So this is an issue that is relevant for all of us. Thank you very much, Giga Khositashvili. And now we're coming to Margarida Amaral, who is going to give the next presentation on the topic of how the numbers of the online quizzes change since the pandemic situation. Margarida Amaral is a member of the University of Porto. She has been working there for 20 years in the e-learning area and is a highly experienced professional in teacher training, strategies for support of teaching and learning communities and e-assessment. Margarida is also the head of Educational Technologies Unit at the University of Porto. And this unit provides technical support and pedagogical orientation to all professors of the university. The ET unit is also responsible for the development of MOOCs and distance learning courses. So dear Margarida, I'm looking forward to listening to your presentation.
Hello, I don't know if you are already seeing my presentation.
Yes, it's visible.
In full screen mode.
Yes, yes, now it's the full screen mode.
Okay, thank you. So I'm with two screens, so this is a bit challenging. Well, thank you for this invitation to participate in this forum. It has been with great pleasure that I have received this invitation and I'm here. And I have been interacting with this partnership. I had the pleasure of receiving some of the partners in Porto a few years ago and share our work, show our studios, the facilities, how what we were implementing then. And I think that this is just a follow-up for the partnership, and to all the participants, I hope it's also interesting to see what has changed, how we have developed from then till now, having to cope with a pandemic situation in between. So I hope this presentation is not too messy, because I think that assessment is always a subject that can take us to some different places in our discussion. This is a short agenda about what we will focus, but we will focus mainly on the needs of the academic community when going fully online, how the university overcame the several constraints and challenges during this COVID-19 pandemic, and how it impacted on the assessment that was done online. Some background. These are topics. They are diverse topics in the background. They may or may not relate with each other, but they all contribute to the different challenges of the implementation of e-assessment at a high stake level. So students have been taking pen and paper assessment since 6 or 7 years old. We all took paper and pen exams during our academic life, and we were facing new challenges when we went online. In the University of Porto, high stakes examinations are going on since 2007. The main reason why teachers started opting for computer-based exams or online exams was because they want to address a large number of students and to have a quick marking, a quick grading of those exams. So not only the marking or the grading was important, but also the feedback. Feedback was very important to do in an automated way. So the main goal is to achieve a quick marking to large number of students at the same time. So that is why multiple choice questions appear in one topic in this presentation. But on the other hand, there was our goal, a slightly different main goal, the goal of the support and the technical team. And the next image you will see in my presentation, you will see during the day in the presentation of my colleague, Teresa, and it's related with the stress. We deal a lot of stress in the academic community, teachers, students, and even the local support colleagues and ourselves when we talk about going online, and mainly if we are addressing assessment issues. Our main goal is to have high-stake exams using a computer in a safe and stress-free environment. So going back to the sentence where the students have been taking pen and paper assessment since they were 6 or 7 years old, when using a computer, it has to be, or it should be also as comfortable or as transparent for them. And technology shouldn't be a stress element to anyone, and even less if we are talking about assessment. And comfortable was a word that was already mentioned in previous presentations during this morning. So our educational technology unit tasks, what we do, we help the academic community to design the exam question types, migration versus transformation. What do I mean with this? It's a good idea to start with simple migration. Staff will look into the results and compare them with the pen and paper results they had before. And then later on, there is a natural process of transformation. That process of using the multimedia elements of the questions that can have video, audio, drag and drop, and interactive, and a more interactive question. But this is a build-on process for the teachers. They have to keep it simple, and then they do the transformation by themselves, and they do the transformation because then they realize the possibilities, they start to trust, they start to feel more comfortable with the system, and then they go on developing more interesting questions for the use of technology, interesting questions point of view. We help in the quiz development, the preparation and communication with all the staff and the students. We do some remote or local support during the assessment, and we also help with the analysis of results. In the quiz development, we help the teachers to understand the LMS interface, or use alternative ways of importing bulks of questions. We help to configure the quiz, and we revise the settings when asked. So some teachers are completely autonomous doing this because they do it since a long time, but some others sometimes ask us to help. During the first lockdown, we came up with this Moodle. We use Moodle for quizzes, and we came up with this Moodle add-on. It's a customized in-house development. The teachers can say if the computer was the exam was going to be in the classroom or at distance. And also they can consult the calendar of scheduled exams, and which give us an overview of the calendar of all the exams that were going to occur at a certain moment in time in Moodle. And when the number of participants reached, I think it was 1,800 at the same period of time, the system didn't allow the teacher to set up that exam, and delivered a notification for support team, for us, and for the teacher. And we got in contact with the teacher saying that it might not be a good idea to deliver the exam in that time, in that day, because there were a lot of exams going on. And I'm going to show you the numbers briefly, and it was quite surprising numbers that we reached. Our local and remote support, it's very, it's a basic support because everything is set up prior to the moment of the exam, but we are there and we are available by telephone or in place in the computer room. We help with the credentials and logins. Many students don't know their logins or their credentials. We help foreign students and also students with special needs. The results analysis, we provide teacher some very brief explanation on how to interpret the graphics that Moodle assembles after an exam is taken. Training actions. When we moved to the webinar format, we moved to online all the university on the 12th of March of 2020. All our training moved to a webinar format. There were no limit of participants, no registration needed. People can just show up. We had 107 webinars from March 2020 to March 2021. We were 6 people conducting these webinars, and 27 of them were devoted to computer-based exams for teachers and also for local support teams. and we are still having more planned ahead. Personalized individual online meetings through Zoom were also taken, and a lot of them were requested specifically to help the development of online exams. So this personalized individual online meetings were meetings that teachers could discuss with us, not only technical issues relating with the implementation of the exams, but also some pedagogical approaches. Fraud prevention. So when we moved online, well, fraud is not a new issue. I saw on in the chat someone wrote that before, and fraud and cheating was always an issue. And maybe online it was more visible, or new ways of cheating, new ways of not being ethical, but we cannot control people. We can educate people, and we should do something to overcome the cheating problems when doing remote assessment or classroom assessment, and we can do some things to avoid that. Well, we can change the way we assess, of course, but if we continue to do final examinations with multiple choice questions or open book exams, if we are going to be remote, we can have some measures. Some teachers use the time limit. Although it shouldn't be a race, it shouldn't be totally at ease. They force sequential navigation. They changed the question types. They increased the question banks and assembled random question using Moodle functionalities of the quiz module. So there were a lot of strategies, and also an effective on-site proctoring. From the rectorate, the recommendations were always to do the assessment moments face-to-face and not using remote environments. We don't have remote tools, to the proper remote tools to the proctoring of the online exams. We are a large university. We have some courses with 200 and 300 students. So to scale up those kind of solutions, it's very challenging, and we didn't have the time or the training or the knowledge to implement that with confidence and trust. So we use what we have. So what about now? What's going to happen? In terms of courses in the Moodle platform, that's where the quizzes are done. Last year, we ended up with 65% roughly of the courses online. And this graphic is related to all the courses. And we should all focus on the first cycle of studies courses. And if we focus on that first cycle and leave the doctoral and masters out, these numbers increase a lot. But this academic year, we are almost near 90%, and these were numbers that I took and didn't include the second semester. So I believe, and we believe, that it is going to be around 80 or 90% of all the courses in the first cycle of studies are going to be in Moodle. And are the quizzes here to stay? So we had this 3,925 courses with 6,400 quizzes last year. Some of them were in computer rooms, and others were at home. And this year, and the year is nearly ending, but not near the end, we already have 8,050 quizzes. So I guess we can say that they are here to stay. So what about now again? So new challenges. Bring your own device. Is it a response? Are we talking about equally safe environments? We are going to assume the risks. We have to work with the local IT support teams. This is really important, to articulate with the local support teams. We are looking into Safe Exam Browser. We have been using Safe Exam Browser during this first lockdown and second lockdown, and it's been quite an experience. It's been challenging, but it's very well, I think it's becoming more and more accepted in the different faculties. Also, there are some questions that arise, challenges that arise with the bring your own device approaches. Personal laptop, is it mandatory? Should we allow private internet service providers? Should students be excluded if they fail to follow instructions? How do we deal with the diversity of the equipment? What is the local support team's field of performance? Are they going to operate in the student's computer? Can they do that? Are they allowed to do that? Room characteristics, electric power. I think I have to finish my presentation. Electric power, the Wi-Fi. Oh, time's up. Sorry. These are all challenges that we have to deal, and we have to give clear instructions. We have to ease the logistic burden. The student-computer ratio will probably remain the same. Safe Exam Browser is a nice option to us. It is integrated now with our LMS, Moodle. It's versatile, and it's going to be installed in every computer on the university campus. It's going to be something that we are going to establish to the next school year alongside with the digital university department. And the institution needs to offer alternatives, and it's alternatives. I wrote alternative, but it's alternatives. We are surfing the wave of this COVID-19, and we can have some conclusions taken from this period when we moved fully online and we just tried to survive. And some things were really good. Different pedagogical and technical approaches to teaching and learning and to assessment. We are a very diverse university with different approach, demands flexible support and always a quest for versatile solutions. There was this sudden shift to online that had an impact on the computer-based assessment practices. The numbers suggest us that these practices are here to stay, and we continue our search for an integrated, a reliable and a trustworthy set of solutions, and the training and support are fundamental to the success of any change that is inserted in the current practice. So we will keep our goal of searching for a solution that is that is confident to everybody. And since March 12th, the first lockdown, our team, we have been working around self-motivation because we were under a lot of stress. University life changed a lot after COVID-19. So I will end up sharing this a famous quote of self-motivation quote. It's not easy, but it's worth it. So every day we try to make it worth it after a cup of coffee. So thank you very much for your attention. And I'll leave our contacts there.
Thank you very much, Margarida, for the interesting presentation. It's almost time for coffee. However, before that, we'll have a very short Q&A session. And here I would like to ask Anna Aleksanyan to pick up the questions in the chat and direct them towards the speakers. Please.
Yes, thank you very much. We had interesting questions regarding to assessment that could be divided into two parts. First part regarding to the assessment, online tools, and of course some answers have been written in the chat, but even there is question about which kind of online assessment tools there are, which are more successful for us as university teachers, and which kind of successful platforms there are for online assessment. And second part, which is not much discussed during this panel, that is about self-monitoring and self-assessment. So the question is how to support learners in self-monitoring and self-assessment. Are there any tools or are these kind of tools successful during online assessment? The floor is given to Wim Van Petegem. Professor Petegem, please, because these kind of questions have been directed to you. Please, thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, interesting questions. And if I read them in the chat, it's maybe not so much about the tools for self-assessment and self-monitoring, but it's more about criteria and objectives and how to support the learners. Okay, if I think about that particular question, I immediately think that we should position self-assessment in the learning experience of our students in a proper way. What do I mean by that? We should define what we mean by self-assessment in terms of how can we define it as a learning experience, as a learning activity, something that the student could go through in perceiving the goals of the course or the curriculum. So I think one part of the answer is that we need to be very clear to the student what the role is of that self-assessment and self-monitoring in the whole learning process. That is one thing that we need to do, to sort of scaffolding the students in their learning process and position the self-assessment in that as a learning activity. The second thing that comes into my mind to support the learners is the importance of feedback. Whenever we talk about assessment, I think it's like a medal with two sides. You have assessment at the one side and feedback immediately at the other side, and they go hand in hand. So whenever we talk about self-assessment, we also have to think about how do we give students feedback on that. It's not because the students are doing that themselves and maybe online and maybe is sort of hidden for the teacher. I do not think that this is true. We should always be aware that as teachers, we should give feedback to the students, and we should also train our students in how to deal with that feedback. A couple of months ago, I was on a seminar given by someone from the UK about feedback in general, and she talked about feedback literacy. And I think that this is a nice sort of competence that we have to teach our students, and that we also have need to have as teachers ourselves, how to give feedback also in a self-assessment environment. So that would be my answer to that question. I hope that is sufficient.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very interesting for me too personally. As we have only 2 minutes, just in addition, do you think that peer assessment tools are effective in online platforms? How do you think about this? So who would like to answer?
I can continue, but I will gladly give
the floor to others. Okay, please go ahead because we don't have much time.
Okay, I think that it all depends, and again, it boils down to the same sort of answer. You need to position the peer assessment in a proper way, and you should explain to the students how they need to do that. And then it's not so much important what kind of tool you're using for that. I think it's more important to explain what the purpose is of the peer assessment. And students might even find other tools than the ones that you have in mind to give peer feedback to each other and to do the peer assessment. Sorry, and I already said it. Peer feedback is also important here. So it's not just the assessment, the peer assessment. The tools are not important for me. It's what the purpose is and how you position it in the learning experience, and then coupled with the feedback.
If I may, I would like to add over here. the idea of giving feedback should gain some developmental character. If students understand that you're giving the assessment or feedback just for the purpose of them to develop and then learn how to use it later on, because as was mentioned, they face lots of appraisal meetings at their workplaces. They have to be prepared for this procedure being assessed. So, and any assessment is not a punishment, but it's a very good way of helping them develop and seeing their weaknesses probably, and also acknowledging their strengths. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And one more question to Wolfgang Weiß. How do you think, is there any unique tool for online assessment which you would like to advise university teachers to use?
Since I'm only using Moodle, I don't have the comparison for different tools, but I think Moodle covers everything you need for online assessment. And you can have a large variety from online exams to wikis or anything other you can imagine. So with Moodle, you have a lot of freedom and a lot of plugins you can install. But of course, this needs a lot of time to get familiar with the system. It's an open source system, so you can do everything with it. So this needs some time and some understanding for that. But I only use Moodle, so I cannot really answer this question, sorry.
Thank you very much. And one more question to Giga and Margarida Amaral. Do you have at your university effective platform beside Moodle or not?
I can go for first. We use Moodle, and we use Moodle as the main platform, the main tool for e-learning activities. And we also encourage all teachers to use Moodle to the assessment activities. But we know that there are some teachers that use also the Google tools or Microsoft Teams tools. So they explore different kinds of platforms or different kinds of tools.
Okay, so I will quickly comment on this. In our case as well, the majority of the academic staff is using Moodle, but we still have some cases of using Google Classroom as a learning management platform in some schools, in some departments.
Okay, thank you very much. From the side of Ilia State University, I could add that we have at Moodle platform workshops, that some kind of tool which is very useful for peer assessment and also for self-assessment. And I would advise to use this kind of tools in the wide range. Thank you very much to all participants. Now we have a break for 10 minutes. Please come back after 10 minutes.
And I would also like to thank all speakers. Thank you very much, Anna, for the moderation, and a very warm thank you to all speakers for your very inspiring presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dear participants, this break will last 5 minutes, and the next session will start at 14:10 Brussels time.